We've been talking about ways to group organisms, how you know how closely related they are and what category you're going to put them in. We started really big. We started with 3 domains. Either organisms are going to have no nucleus, or they are going to have a nucleus. So anything you find on Earth is going to fall into these categories. Either it's not going to have a nucleus or it is. All right? Then we further broke those domains down into kingdoms. All right? If it doesn't have a nucleus, it's either going to be the eubacteria or the archaebacteria. If it does have a nucleus, it's going to either be a protist, a fungi, a plant, or an animal. Now what we're going to do is take these kingdoms, like specifically kingdom plant, and break it down. Or specifically kingdom Animalia, and break that down. So what kind of animal? Are we talking about an insect, or a mammal, or a reptile, or a bird? And so that's what we're doing when we talk about Linneaus' system of classification. He uses this system to name and group specific things so we can then give them an actual scientific name. To start off with, you are going to have to memorize the order in which these go, because it is the genus and species that gives us the Latin or the scientific name for an organism. For example, humans are Homo sapiens, Homo sapien. E. coli, the bacteria, is Escherichia coli, Escherichia coli. So a lot of things are going to be in the same genus, but only one thing can be in a species. There's only one human species. Okay? So, you are going to have to memorize the order of this. The best way to do that is by using a mnemonic device. Mnemonic devices are where you take the first letter of every word and you make a sentence or a saying or something you'll remember so you can remember the order of this. In your book, it's kings play chess on fine-grained sand. I personally like Kim prefers cookies over fuzzy green sausage. Some students have made some other funny ones, like Kim prefers cookies off fat guys' stomachs. So whatever you want to come up with, it's anything you want. You are going to have to include that on your notes page, so start thinking about that. So when I say if 2 things are right next to each other here, they're more closely related than if they're next to each other here. So this is going to come into play. The order of that is going to matter in a moment. So let's talk about what these mean. For example, if we take kingdom Animalia, we can break it down to find out what kind of animal we're talking about. In this example, we're talking about a Homo sapiens, so this is a human. Okay? But I've given you some other examples. So, if I have kingdom Animalia, that means every animal on Earth that we find that has no cell wall, is eukaryotic, has a nucleus, is heterotrophic and multicellular, then we know it's going to fall into this kingdom. So you can either be a chordate or an invertebrate. So you can either have a spinal cord or no spinal cord. If you think about some animals that have a spinal cord, we do, sharks, turtles, and then things that don't are things like coral, jellyfish, lower order animals. Okay? So we're going to deal with animals that have a spinal cord. You can either be a mammal, which means you're warm-blooded and give birth to live young, or you can be a reptile, which means you're cold-blooded and you lay eggs. So what type of animal with a spine are you? A warm-blooded animal or a cold-blooded animal? We're obviously going to deal with humans here, so we're taking class Mammalia. All right, well, anything in class Mammalia can be a primate or it can be a carnivore. There are more things here. I'm just trying to really get you to understand that how these become more narrow. All right, so if we're an animal and we have a spinal cord and we're warm-blooded, we are either going to be a primate or a carnivore. Primates are like the apes. And a carnivore, these are your meat eaters. So So this is where we're going to separate from dogs and lions and tigers and other carnivorous animals that eat meat and tear meat. We're animals with a spinal cord. We are warm-blooded. We are in the ape family, and we're hominids. Hominid versus Hylobatidae. These are your great apes. And these are your small apes. These guys dominate the forests. They're really big. They're aggressive. They're the gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees that we're familiar with. And these are tiny little things like gibbons, which I'll show you in the next slide. All right, so if we're animals with spinal cords, we're warm-blooded, we're apes, we're great apes, well, we can be wise man. Okay? It means we're wise. We have a frontal cortex. We can figure things out. We have opposable thumbs. We can make tools, fire, wheels. We can grow our own crops. We don't have to be hunter-gatherers anymore. We can have farms with animals on them. Okay? Versus Pongo. What Pongo means is these are your ancient apes. So these are like the first apes to arise and really haven't changed very much. These have evolved. They've continued to change and grow and get smarter. And then we get down to sapien, which is our species, and this means man. So Homo sapien translates to wise man. And this is what a human is. Okay? So just taking these, we are kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, because we have a spinal cord, class Mammalia, we're mammals, order, we're primates, we're great apes, our genus is Homo, and there's other genus of these, which I'll show you in just a second. But then we have species of sapien, which means man, and this is us. Just to show you an example of family Hylobatidae, all right, this is a gibbon. He's really tiny. These are the small apes. And this is genus Pongo. These are those anthropoid apes, ancient, anthropology. It means very old. If I show you this chart, all right, here are your primates. And then here's a common ancestor. And at one point, the genes started changing. Gene differences, mutations, mutations, mutations. And you got enough mutations that you ended up with two different potential species. This one went extinct. Then this one, mutations, mutations, you ended up with another species that went extinct. All right, more divisions and mutations, ended up with two more species. That went extinct. This one was fine. So this is the ancestor to all of these, including the hominids and Hylobatidae. All right, so the great apes and the smaller apes. So this is one of our common ancestors. These guys stopped evolving. They're good the way they are. We still have this. Currently, they just didn't keep going with it because they're just showing you the hominids here. Okay, so now here we have genus Pongo. All right, so Pongo pygmaeus. Pygmaeus is the species, genus and species. All right, Pon troglodytes, Homo sapiens, and then there's a lot of Homo species that have gone extinct. So Homo sapiens, that's us. Homo erectus, that's the first creature to evolve a pelvis that allowed him to stand upright instead of on all fours. So erectus, standing up. And Homo habilis, this was the first wise guy. This is the first guy making tools and fire and things like that. Okay, so these are all of our extinct ancestors. All right, they're our cousins. We didn't come from these things. All right, we came from something, the missing link. We came from something that made all of this. Everything went extinct except Homo sapiens. All right, and then of course down here, all right, this is gorilla. So gorillas are hominids, just like we are. But we aren't very closely related to gorillas because a lot of mutations had to happen before we can get down to here. So actually this guy, us, we are more closely related to a chimpanzee, Pon troglodytes. We're very closely related because we only have to go back this far. All right, and then Pongo pygmaeus, again, we're pretty far away from him because all of these mutations had to happen. All right, so this is what that chart just showed you. We are all kingdom animals. We have phylum Chordata. We're class Mammalia. We're order Primate, family Hominid. But now our genus, like I told you, is different. So we have our genus and species, and then the common name. We are Homo sapien, humans. An orangutan is Pongo pygmaeus. A gorilla is gorilla, and a chimpanzee is Pon troglodytes. So a question that I might ask you on the test is, who is more closely related? Australopithecus and Homo sapien, or Pon and Pongo? And you would have to know these are more closely related because they just came off the same ancestor. And then those mutations led to that. This, by the way, is like your Neanderthals and your caveman, also went extinct. Once you know the genus and species of an organism, you can name it. You're going to name an organism using binomial nomenclature, which is a two-name naming system. It's got two parts, the genus and the species. The genus is capitalized, and the species is lowercase. You can also abbreviate these names. That's scientifically accepted. So what you do is you take the genus name, and you only take the first initial, you capitalize it, and you add a period. It's capitalized first initial, followed by a period. Then you spell out the species in lowercase. So an abbreviated version of Homo sapien would be H period sapien. To show you some more classification of animals, let's take a horse. They're animals. They have spinal cords. They're warm-blooded, but they are not part of the ape order. They're not very closely related to us. They're perseodactyly, which means odd-toed. They have one big toe, horses, in the front. We call them hooves. Okay, they're part of the family Equidae and the genus Equus, and the species is going to depend on what kind of horse. Are we talking about a horse or a donkey or maybe a mule? So donkey is Equus asinus. That's why they call donkeys asses. Equus asinus. A horse is Equus cabilis. So they're in the same genus, but they're a different species. Some genus are so closely related that they can breed. For example, if I take a small male donkey and mate it with a larger female horse, you're going to get a mule. But a mule is not a distinct species. It's an infertile hybrid, so it's a genetic mix of a male donkey and a female horse. It can't be the other way around, because if he's bigger than her, the baby will grow bigger than her uterus and it'll kill her. So a species is a group of living organisms consisting of similar individuals that are capable of exchanging genes. So a species is any group of living organisms that can mate with each other. So just to show you, Equus asinus is a donkey. Equus cabilis, I have no idea if I'm spelling this right, is a horse. And Equus nothing is a mule, because it's not its own species. In order to be a species, you have to be able to reproduce. These guys can't reproduce, so they're not a species.